Why did the desert always feel like it was hiding something? The heat pressed down, endless and merciless, turning stone to fire and sky to white haze. To most people, this was emptiness, a graveyard of sand and silence. But to Lieutenant Lena, call sign Ghost, it was the closest thing she had to a sanctuary. Her A-10 Warthog roared between the canyon walls, the guttural engines reverberating like thunder trapped inside stone. The aircraft was old and brutally honest. No sleek lines, no cinematic flair, just a flying tank built for one purpose, to survive punishment and keep fighting. Lena loved it for that, loved its stubborn refusal to be anything but what it was. Her hands, steady and calloused, gripped the controls as if they were bones of her own body. She had flown this corridor for 6 months. Every twist in the canyon, every shimmer of heat rising from rock, every updraft all memorized, etched into her as deeply as the scars on her skin. But even here, even in her sanctuary, there was a shadow. A whisper in the back of her mind. They had called it Ghost Protocol, the classified mission that sent her on these endless flights without questions, without explanations, just coordinates, just silence. She told herself it was routine. She told herself it was duty. But tonight, as the sun painted the rocks blood red, the word ghost felt heavier than usual, like a warning, like a premonition. Her cockpit was a world of rhythm, the low hum of life support, the constant thrum of engines, the faint static of encrypted systems running in silence. She let herself breathe into that rhythm. Inhale, exhale, steady. Then the rhythm broke. Her radar lit up. A piercing alarm ripped through the calm, its shrill tone like a scream in the tiny space. Two signatures, fast and closing, streaked down from altitude like hawks diving on prey. F-16s. Two of them. Her blood turned cold. This wasn't in the plan. This wasn't even possible. Her protocol was clear, no other aircraft authorized in this sector. None. This was her corridor, her silence, her mission. But now, predators were boxing her in. Unknown A-10, the radio snapped to life, the voice sharp, professional, unforgiving. You are violating classified airspace. Identify immediately or we will engage. Her throat went dry. She couldn't answer. Her orders were absolute: maintain silence under all circumstances. To speak was to betray the mission, to break the chain. Her silence would damn her, but her silence was also her only shield. The F-16 slid into formation on her wings, one left, one right, their sleek bodies gleaming like knives against the sun. She saw the lead pilot's visor tilt toward her, his attention fixed. He was studying her, analyzing her. And she knew what he was asking himself. What the hell is an A-10 doing here? She wanted to explain. God, she wanted to tell him this was not a mistake, not a breach. She was supposed to be here. This was her mission. But the words stayed locked in her throat. Silence, that was her prison. That was her curse. The weight of it pressed against her chest until it hurt to breathe. Her cockpit felt smaller now, the air thick with heat and adrenaline. The sound of the F-16's engines, high-pitched and sharp, cut through her Warthog's low growl. It was like being hunted by faster, sleeker animals who had every advantage. Then her radar screamed again. A third signal. Not a fighter this time. High altitude, slow, silent. A predator drone. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't just an interception. This was something else, something orchestrated. She wasn't being stumbled upon, she was being hunted. The voice came again, harder this time. Unknown A-10, acknowledge. You have 30 seconds to comply or we will consider you hostile. 30 seconds. That was all. Her mind, trained for crisis, snapped into calculation. Options. None good. The canyon walls were too tight for maneuvers. The F-16s were faster, better armed for the sky. Her A-10 was built to take punishment, yes, but not to outrun hawks with missiles on their wings. To run would expose her, to stay silent would kill her. Her gloved hand trembled against the controls. Sweat beaded down her spine, soaking into her flight suit. Her orders had been clear: silence, always silence. But wasn't silence just another way of dying? She keyed her mic, just for a second, just enough to drop a clue. "This is Warthog 77, she said, her voice steady though her heart was chaos. "Ghost protocol active. Verify with command before taking action." Her breath caught in her throat. It was a gamble, a single breadcrumb. That phrase, ghost protocol, was supposed to mean something. Supposed to unlock recognition, a check, a pause. The response was immediate, crushing. "Negative, Warthog 77. No ghost protocol authorized in this sector. You will follow us to a landing site. Now." Her vision blurred. No authorization, no recognition. Her chain of command had abandoned her, buried her, or simply forgotten she existed. She was a soldier, and yet she was alone. A ghost, after all. Her hands steadied on the stick, her breathing slowed. She had trained for combat, for chaos, for the moment when choice is stripped away and all that remains is instinct. She followed. The canyon gave way to open desert, a stretch of blistering emptiness broken only by heat, haze, and sky. The F-16s angled her toward a strip of black carved into the sand, long, clean, too perfect to be improvised. A runway, hidden, waiting. Her stomach tightened as her Warthog's wheels touched down. Dust billowed in her wake. She rolled to a stop. And then the world erupted. Black SUVs poured from camouflaged bunkers, their tires spitting gravel. Doors slammed. Men in unmarked tactical gear fanned out with perfect mechanical precision. Their rifles gleamed in the sun, optics high-grade, their posture fluid, lethal. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. Lena's pulse thudded in her ears as she went through shutdown procedures, her hands moving on autopilot while her eyes scanned the perimeter. Snipers on rooftops, camouflage doors sliding shut. Every movement screamed preparation. They had been waiting for her, and she had walked right into their trap. She leaned back against her seat for just a moment, eyes closed, heart pounding. She could almost feel the crosshairs pressing against her chest, the silent breath of men ready to fire. She told herself she was calm, that she was trained for this. But the truth sat heavier. She was a ghost, and ghosts had no one to call for help. Then came the voice, not in her headset but echoing across the tarmac, urgent, shaken, human. "Wait, hold fire, look at the tail, Echo Nix." Her eyes snapped open. The word hung in the air, foreign and familiar all at once. The snipers froze, the operators faltered. Confusion rippled like heat across the ranks. And Lena, alone in her cockpit, felt the ground tilt beneath her. What did they just say? What the hell was Echo Nix? Her heart hammered, not with fear now, but with something sharper, something colder. Because deep inside, beneath years of discipline and silence, she realized something. This was never about her flight plan. This was never about her violation. This was about her. Her aircraft, her tail number. Her existence. And the world, it seemed, was not ready for the ghost it thought was long gone. What could make an entire base go silent at the sight of 6 faded digits? Lena sat motionless in her cockpit, her gloved fingers still resting on the controls, though the engines were now quiet. The Warthog's low growl had died away, leaving only the faint hum of the desert wind seeping through cracks in the canopy. Yet outside, she could feel it, the air had changed. Moments ago, rifles had been aimed squarely at her chest, orders had been clear, package secured, pilot neutralized if necessary. But now, hesitation hung over the black-clad operators like an invisible weight. The sniper on the rooftop, who had been one breath away from ending her life, had lowered his weapon. His voice, a whisper through their comms, carried like thunder. Echo Nix, not for record. Echo Nix. The words had rattled every man outside. But for Lena, they were a blank space in her memory, something she should know, something she almost knew but couldn't place. Her chest rose and fell with controlled, shallow breaths. Training kept her steady, but her mind was spiraling. What were they seeing? What did her aircraft carry that she did? Through the canopy glass, she caught the corporal who'd been ordered to check her tail. His hands trembled as he raised binoculars, focusing on the numbers painted in fatting military stencil across her A-10 steel skin. AF 800,965. 6 digits that should have meant nothing. Just another aircraft ID, just another machine in the inventory. But the corporal's eyes widened. His mouth fell open. He lowered the binoculars with hands that shook like a man watching a ghost walk out of a grave. "Sir," he stammered, his voice barely audible even through the comms. "That number, that's impossible." The commander beside him went rigid. Silence rippled through the perimeter, through the snipers, through the ground crew. Even the pilots who had boxed her and stood frozen, helmets tilted toward the tail as though staring at an open wound. Impossible. The word looped in Lena's mind like a broken transmission. Her training screamed for composure, for calm analysis, but inside she was unraveling. She had memorized every rivet of her aircraft, every scar in its fuselage, every vibration in its engines. But the tail number, she had never thought twice about it. It had always been there, faded, forgotten, unremarkable. Now it was the center of a storm. Her canopy reflected her face back at her, pale, jaw set, eyes hollow with confusion. She searched herself for an answer, some buried detail, some mission file, some classified whisper she'd overheard. Nothing, just silence. Then movement. The lead F-16 pilot, the man who had ordered her down, stepped out of his jet. His boots hit the tarmac with crisp finality. His stride was all authority, shoulders squared, head high, the posture of a man used to being obeyed. Colonel Reed. She didn't know his name yet, but she could feel his rank in the way he carried himself. He walked toward her Warthog with purpose, speaking into his helmet mic, issuing clipped commands to the perimeter. But when his eyes lifted, when he came close enough to read the faded digits on her tail, everything changed. His stride faltered, his shoulders stiffened, the hand holding his helmet began to shake. And then, impossibly, he dropped it. The high-tech visor hit the concrete with a sharp, echoing crack that cut through the silence. It was a sound like glass breaking in a cathedral, wrong and violent in the stillness. He just stared at her tail number as though it were an apparition, as though it had clawed its way out of a grave. His wingman, a younger pilot with quick movements and the hungry energy of someone still climbing the ranks, reached the same spot seconds later. Captain Ezra. His reaction mirrored almost exactly. He froze, his body slack, his face drained of color. His hand reached for the aircraft, resting against the steel fuselage like a drowning man clinging to a lifeline. His eyes flicked between the digits and unable to comprehend. "Sir," whispered, his voice cracking, that's the ghost bird." Didn't answer, his jaw clenched, his breath came sharp. Lena's chest tightened as she watched them. They weren't just looking at her aircraft, they were looking at her. "Your name," said finally, his voice low, strained as though afraid of the answer. "Pilot, what's your name?" Her throat constricted. For a heartbeat she considered silence. But instinct, training, duty, they all pushed her to respond. "Lieutenant Lena," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. The sound of it startled even her. "Call sign Ghost." Staggered back as if struck. His helmet slipped from his grasp, clattering to the ground. His mouth opened, but only a hoarse croak came out. No, that's not possible. Ghost is dead. We buried her." The words hung in the blistering air like a curse. Lena's pulse hammered. Buried her. What the hell was he talking about? She scanned their faces, hard mask cracking with disbelief, pale terror, the operators shifting uneasily in the heat. They weren't looking at a pilot anymore. They were looking at an impossibility. Ghost. Dead. Buried. Her call sign, her identity, was not just a name to them. It was a grave, a story already finished. She gripped the edges of her seat, knuckles whitening beneath her gloves. Her memories clashed in violent waves. She remembered flying training routes, Arizona sunlight, routine drills, but now images flickered at the edges of her mind. Sandstorms, anti-aircraft fire, the taste of adrenaline in her mouth, memories that didn't belong to her, yet felt like they had been carved into her very bones. Her heart raced faster. What if this wasn't confusion? What if it was memory breaking through? Colonel's voice broke the silence again, but this time it wasn't an order. It was a confession, a memory spilling out like blood. Syria, he said, his eyes fixed not on her but on the horizon as if seeing a battlefield half a world away. March 15th, 2022. Operation Desert Falcon. We were there, and so were you. Lena froze. March 15th. Her birthday. She remembered that day, but she remembered it differently, a training mission over the Arizona desert, uneventful, forgettable. Yet's voice painted another picture: smoke, missiles, death, and her flying cover in the chaos. Her breath caught. Which memory was real? The desert heat pressed harder, suffocating, unrelenting. Sweat stung her eyes, but she couldn't blink away the image forming in her mind. An A-10 banking low over burning sand, cannon fire ripping through enemy lines, explosions lighting the night. She remembered the vibration of the GAU-8 cannon, the acrid sting of cordite, the scream of Sam Locks in her headset. But she had never been there. Had she? Her chest rose and fell faster, the edges of her vision blurring. Outside's voice grew harder, edged with grief. We buried you, Arlington, full honors, empty coffin, we saluted, we mourned. The words hit her harder than the desert sun ever could. An empty coffin. Her funeral. Her gloved hand rose instinctively to her chest, pressing against the pounding of her heart, as though checking if it was still truly there. She felt dizzy, like the ground beneath her was splitting in two, pulling her with it. One half anchored in the routine missions she remembered, the other half dragged into a war she didn't recall but felt in her blood. A war she had died in. The desert wind picked up, carrying dust across the runway, swirling it around her Warthog like smoke from an unseen fire. She stared at the tail number, at the faded paint, at the 6 digits that had turned soldiers into statues. AF 800,965. Her aircraft was supposed to be hers, but what if it wasn't just a machine? What if it was a grave marker, a relic of a mission she wasn't supposed to survive? Her head dropped forward, helmet pressing against the edge of the console. She shut her eyes, trying to breathe, trying to anchor herself. But inside, everything was unraveling. Ghost. Dead. Buried. She was alive, she was here, and yet maybe part of her was. And for the first time in years, Lena, soldier, pilot, professional, whispered a truth she had never allowed herself to speak. I don't know who I am anymore. How do you argue with men who swear they buried you? Lena stood at the foot of her A-10, the desert heat clawing at her flight suit. Her boots pressed into tarmac that shimmered like liquid glass, but inside she felt cold. Ice in her veins. Because across from her, Colonel wasn't looking at her like a pilot. He was looking at her like a ghost. We were there, said, his voice raw, stripped of all military precision. We saw you die. Captain hovered at his side, pale and unsteady. His jaw clenched as though holding back the impossible. His eyes, though, betrayed everything: fear, reverence, dread. Lena shook her head, trying to anchor herself to the facts she remembered. Arizona, training missions, briefings that never mentioned Syria, birthdays that passed quietly, spent over desert skis, not combat zones. But's words painted a different picture, vivid, visceral, undeniable. He took a breath, gaze unfocused, as though the Arizona desert was dissolving before his eyes. Syria, Aleppo outskirts. We were providing cover for a special operations team pulling a high-value target. Intel said light resistance. It was a lie. SAM sights, anti-aircraft guns, dug-in infantry, a slaughterhouse waiting for us. Lena's chest tightened. She wanted to dismiss it, but as he spoke, flashes invaded her mind. Fire blooming against sand. Radar warnings screaming. The acrid sting of burning fuel. Memories that weren't hers, but felt like they belonged under her skin. His voice dropped lower, each word weighted with pain. We were dead. My wingman hit. The team pinned down. Minutes left before reinforcements closed in, and then his eyes locked on hers. You appeared. Her throat constricted. She wanted to deny it. She wanted to scream that she was never there, but something inside her, the echo of a memory, stopped her. Stepped forward, his voice shaking with awe. You came out of the sandstorm, no radar signature, no warning, just, he exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Like a phantom, first pass you took out their primary SAM site, clean, surgical, like you'd been born for it. Lena's knees weakened. She could almost feel the pull of the joystick, the vibration of the cannon, the 30-m roar reverberating through her bones. But she had never been there. Had she? The second pass, continued, his eyes wide with a reverence that bordered on fear, you hit their motor pool. 12 vehicles gone in less than a minute, but they had you bracketed by then. I saw the tracers converging on you. I heard the missile locks screaming in my headset. You should have pulled up, climbed, lived. His voice cracked, but you didn't. The silence after those words was suffocating. Lena swallowed hard, her throat dry. Her mind split in two, one side screaming with the certainty of her own memories, the other drowning in flashes of battle she couldn't explain. His voice returned, softer now, almost reverent. You stayed low. You kept hitting targets. Every pass you made gave us room to breathe, enough for the team to break contact, enough for us to get our people out. He paused, his eyes narrowing, voice dropping to a whisper. Your last transmission, package delivered, good hunting. And then silence. We watched your bird disappear into fire. Lena's heart clenched. She felt the words like shrapnel. Package delivered, good hunting. They weren't her words. And yet they were. Buried somewhere in the back of her mind, they rang with a chilling familiarity. His voice was a whisper now. Search and rescue found wreckage scattered over 15 miles, aircraft destroyed, no remains, nothing left but charred metal. His gaze flicked to her tail number, his face pale as ash. We buried an empty coffin at Arlington. We buried you. The air was heavy, the silence almost unbearable. Lena wanted to scream at them. I'm here, I'm alive. You buried nothing but shadows. But her voice wouldn't come, because deep inside, under layers of discipline and denial, she felt the scar. Not on her skin, not on her record, but on her soul. Her hand rose slowly, tugging at the glove on her left hand. The leather peeled away, exposing pale skin marked by a thin white line. A scar, faint but undeniable, jagged, curved, burned into her flesh. She stared at it, frozen, a scar she had no memory of earning. And then it hit, a flash. The cockpit engulfed in flame, metal burning hot against her palm, the stick searing into her hand as she fought to hold the aircraft steady. Pain like fire crawling up her arm, the smell of her own skin cooking. She gasped, her body jerking as if the pain had returned. Her vision swam. She was back in Arizona. She was back on the tarmac. But the scar was real. Her knees buckled. She caught herself against the ladder of her Warthog, her breath ragged. His eyes widened, his face pale. You remember. She shook her head violently, trying to deny it, but the images kept coming. Gunfire, sand, smoke, fire. and her own voice calm, steady, unshaken, whispering, "Package delivered, good hunting." Her stomach turned. She pressed her fist against it, trying to keep herself from collapsing. She was unraveling. The world tilted again when another voice cut through the chaos. Smooth, cold, calculated. "Enough." A figure stepped forward from the shadows of the black SUVs. Unlike the operators, he wore no tactical gear, just a dark, tailored suit that looked impossibly clean against the dust and heat. His stride was deliberate, unhurried, his posture commanding in its restraint. Director Samuel Hayes, DIA. The operators shifted subtly at his presence, rifles lowering just slightly, posture softening. He was the puppeteer, the man with the plan. He stopped a few feet from Lena's Warthog, his gaze locked on her like a scientist studying a specimen. His voice was calm, almost gentle, but with steel beneath it. "Lieutenant, what you're feeling, the scar, the memories, they're real. You volunteered for a program 3 years ago, Project Echo Nix." The words hit her like a physical blow. She staggered back against her aircraft, eyes wide. The word she had heard whispered, the word that had thrown the operators into chaos, Echo Nix. Hayes continued, voice even, unshaken. "Advanced temporal reconnaissance, quantum entanglement applied to consciousness. 2 aircraft, 2 realities, 1 pilot." Lena shook her head, tears stinging her eyes despite the dry desert air. "That's impossible." Hayes' gaze didn't waver. "And yet you stand here." The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. His voice cracked, his hands trembling as he pointed at her. "So what are you, a projection, a copy? What the hell are we looking at?" Hayes' expression was cold, calculating. Not a copy, not a projection, both. The aircraft in Syria was real. The pilot in Syria was real, but so was the pilot in Arizona. 2 versions of one soul split across space and time. Lena's heart thundered, her legs weak beneath her. 2 versions, 2 lives, 2 deaths. Her vision blurred. She saw herself in both places, flying training routes in Arizona and flying through fire in Syria. 2 versions of the same heartbeat, one buried in Arlington, the other standing here, trembling in the desert sun. Her voice was barely a whisper. "So which one am I?" Hayes' eyes softened just for a moment. "That," he said, "is the question. How much truth can a soldier take before it breaks her?" Lena stood frozen beside her Warthog, her body still, her mind unraveling. The scar on her hand throbbed faintly, a reminder of fire she could not remember, of pain she should never have felt, and stared at her like men staring at a ghost. And now Hayes, calm, composed, unreadable, was laying her existence bare. "You volunteered," Hayes said, his voice carrying like low thunder across the silent tarmac. "Project Echo Nix, experimental, unproven, a leap into quantum entanglement." Lena's lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to scream that she never volunteered, that she would remember something like this. But the doubt was already there. The fragments of memory, the scar, the echoes. Hayes took a step closer. His shoes crunched against the tarmac, a subtle sound in the suffocating silence. "We called it advanced temporal reconnaissance, the ability to split a pilot's consciousness across 2 aircraft. One remained here, safe in controlled airspace. The other," he gestured toward, and was deployed into combat zones half a world away. The words were absurd, but's face told her they were. His eyes burned with the memory of Aleppo, with the certainty that she had saved his life. "You're saying I was 2 people," Lena's voice cracked. Hayes' gaze locked on hers, steady, unwavering. "Not 2, 1, entangled, every movement, every decision mirrored across realities, 2 bodies, 1 soul." Her stomach twisted. She stumbled back, pressing against the hot metal of her aircraft as though it might ground her in something real. Her breaths came shallow, uneven. It didn't make sense. It couldn't. And yet the memories clawed at her, undeniable. She whispered almost to herself, I was in Arizona that day, training routine. Yes, Hayes said softly, and in Syria fighting dying. Her head shook violently, denial rising like bile. That's not possible. Hayes didn't flinch, and yet you stand here. The words landed like a hammer. She was shaking now, every part of her trembling with the weight of what he was saying. She searched his face, desperate for something human, something to anchor her. You really saw me. You saw me die. His jaw clenched. His voice was quiet but certain. I saw your bird explode. I saw fire consume you. We saluted your coffin. We carried your name. Her knees nearly buckled. A coffin, a funeral, her mother crying over an empty box. Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back with fury. If I died, then who the hell am I? The silence that followed was unbearable. The operators shifted uneasily. The snipers adjusted their scopes, though no one was a target anymore. Even, who had trembled in fear moments ago, now stared at her with something closer to pity. Hayes finally answered, his voice stripped of any pretense of warmth. You are the survivor, the original consciousness, but you carry the memories of your twin, the version of you that died in Syria. When the link severed, your mind absorbed fragments it was never meant to hold. For 3 years, you've lived in 2 realities at once. Lena pressed her hand to her forehead, her skin damp with sweat. The world tilted around her. 2 realities, 2 versions of herself, one alive, one buried. And suddenly the nightmares made sense. The dreams of combat she had never fought, the flashes of fire and sand she had dismissed as stress. They weren't dreams, they were memories, borrowed, stolen. She whispered, voice hoarse, I thought I was losing my mind. You weren't, Hayes said, his tone sharp now cutting. You were remembering, and now you're unraveling. The words hit harder than any missile ever could. Unraveling. Was that what this was? Was she just a mind splitting apart under the weight of 2 lives? Her chest tightened. Her breath came fast. She wanted to deny it, to scream that she was whole, but the truth was clawing through her. She wasn't whole. She was fractured. Hayes crouched slightly, his eyes level with hers, his voice low but insistent. Listen to me, Lieutenant. The technology was dangerous, unstable. That's why the program was buried. But you are living proof it worked. You are the ghost, the only ghost, and you are not supposed to exist. His words were final, damning. Not supposed to exist. Her throat constricted, her heart hammered. She had spent her life serving, obeying, flying missions no one knew about. And now she was nothing but a mistake. Her whisper cracked in the silence. So what am I now? A pilot, a soldier, or just a failed experiment? For a long moment Hayes said nothing. His gaze was unreadable, but then his voice softened just barely. You are a national asset, nothing more, nothing less. Lena closed her eyes. The words cut deep, hollowing her out. A national asset, not a person, not a daughter, not even a soldier, just data, technology, a tool. When she opened her eyes, was staring at Hayes with a fury barely restrained. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched. Finally, he stepped forward, his voice a low growl. Don't you dare reduce her to an asset. She saved lives. She bled for us. You buried her and still she's here. That means something. That means everything. Hayes' eyes flicked to him, calm, dismissive. Colonel, with respect, honor doesn't build programs. Legends don't advance national security. She is valuable only as long as she serves the mission. Nothing more. The standoff between the 2 men was electric, a clash of cold logic against raw humanity. Operators shifted uneasily, even straightened, torn between loyalty to command and reverence for the woman who had once died saving him. And Lena stood in the middle, her body trembling, her mind fracturing under the weight of 2 truths. One that saw her as a tool, one that saw her as a hero. She pressed her palms against her aircraft, the metal scorching against her skin. The Warthog had always been her anchor, her companion, but now even it felt alien. Its scars weren't just training wounds. They were battle marks from a war she didn't remember fighting. She whispered into the hot silence, her voice barely audible. "I don't know who I am anymore." For the first time, his voice softened. He stepped closer, his words heavy with conviction. "You're Ghost. You're the pilot who stayed when everyone else would have run. You're the reason I'm standing here. Don't let them take that from you." Her eyes stung, but she forced the tears back. Ghost, a call sign, a myth, a paradox, a woman who had died and yet still stood here. But inside, a quieter voice whispered another truth. A ghost was not alive. A ghost had no place, no future, no home. And in that moment, with the desert sun burning overhead and two men arguing over whether she was a hero or an asset, Lena realized the truth of all. Maybe she wasn't either. Maybe she was nothing at all. What happens when the memories you swore were yours start to betray you? Lena sat on the edge of her Warthog's wing, helmet discarded at her feet, her gloves dangling from her trembling fingers. The desert wind licked across the tarmac, hot, dry, carrying with it the taste of dust and silence. Around her, rifles still lingered, pilots still stared, and Hayes, always Hayes, watched with the patience of a man who knew time was on his side. Her chest heaved as she tried to steady herself. She pressed her palms against her temples, willing the chaos inside her head to quiet. But it didn't. It grew louder. The scar on her hand burned again, phantom pain rippling up her arm. She shut her eyes and the world fractured. She was in Arizona, training route, sunlight flashing off her canopy. She was in Syria, skimming low over burning oil fields, the smell of fire in her lungs. She was alive. She was dead. The images collided violently, shattering her sense of self. Her breath hitched. She bent forward, gripping her knees, fighting the wave of nausea rising in her throat. "Stay with me, Lieutenant," his voice said, low but steady. He had stepped closer, careful, like approaching a wounded soldier. His hand hovered just inches from her shoulder, hesitant to touch but ready if she fell. "You're here. You're real. Don't let them take that from you." But Hayes cut in, his voice like a scalpel. "Colonel, she is destabilizing. The split realities are converging. If we don't act now, she'll break completely." Lena snapped her head up, eyes blazing. "Stop talking about me like I'm not here." Her voice cracked, raw but sharp enough to silence the operators nearest her. "I'm not a case file. I'm not a program. I'm a person." Hayes didn't flinch. He adjusted his cuff, calm as ever. "You're both, a person and a program. That duality is your curse and your gift." She wanted to scream at him, wanted to tear his calm apart with her fists. But before she could, the memories surged again, harder this time, violent waves crashing against the dam of her mind. She was banking low, her HUD screaming lock warnings. She was pulling so hard her vision tunneled. She was firing the GAU-8, the roar drowning out her heartbeat. She was in flames, her cockpit shattering around her. She was gone. Her body lurched. She staggered off the wing, landing on her knees in the dust, gasping as though she had just been ripped from fire. Tears streaked down her dirt-stained cheeks, hot and unbidden. Dropped beside her, gripping her shoulders now, firm but steady. "Look at me. Lena, Ghost, look at me." Her eyes locked on his, wild, panicked. "I saw it. I felt it. I died." His jaw tightened, his throat working. He couldn't deny it. He had seen it too. But Hayes stepped forward, his shadow falling over both of them. "And yet you stand here. Do you see now? You are the living proof. 2 deaths, 1 survivor. That is the miracle of Echo Nix." "Miracle?" Lena spat, her voice sharp, bitter. She forced herself to her feet, glaring at him with fire through her tears. "You think this is a miracle? To not know who I am? To wake up with scars I never earned, memories I never lived? To be saluted at my own funeral? That's not a miracle, that's hell." The words hit the operators harder than bullets. Some shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. Even, pale and silent, lowered his eyes, unable to meet hers. For the first time, Hayes' jaw tightened. His calm cracked just slightly. War isn't heaven, Lieutenant. War is utility. You are useful. That's what matters. But exploded, his voice thunderous, his rage unchained. Useful? She's not a damn weapon system, Hayes. She's a soldier, a human being. The silence that followed was electric. Two men, two visions, clashing over the life of one woman who was barely holding herself together. Lena's breath came ragged. Her chest rose and fell like she had just flown combat again. She stared between them, her heart aching with a truth that neither wanted to admit. She wasn't just soldier or asset. She wasn't just alive or dead. She was both, and the weight of it was crushing her. She stumbled back, shaking her head. I can't, her voice cracked, broke. I can't carry both lives. I'm not strong enough. For the first time since she'd landed, found his voice. Quiet, halting, but certain. You already have. Lena's head snapped toward him. His face was pale, his eyes sunken with memory, but there was conviction in his voice. You carried us through Aleppo. You carried your unit in Arizona. You carried both sides even when it tore you apart. That's strength. That's more than any of us could have done. The words shook her more than Hayes' revelations or fury, because they carried no agenda, no manipulation, just truth, spoken from a soldier who had lived to tell it. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her body trembled, her soul raw. Hayes' voice cut in again, sharper now. Lieutenant, you have a choice. Either you come with me back into program custody, where we can stabilize what's left of you, or you walk away and the fracture consumes you. Those are your options. Options, as if she had any. Her hands balled into fists. What if I don't choose? Hayes' gaze hardened. Then you die slowly, painfully, as two lives tear you apart. Step between them now, his body a shield, his voice a warning. She's not yours to command anymore. The air shifted. Operators raised their rifles slightly, uncertain where loyalty lay. Hayes glared at, his composure unraveling in real time. Lena stood behind them, her breath slowing, her eyes clearing. She looked at Hayes. She looked at, and at the rifles trained loosely around her. And for the first time since landing, she felt a flicker of something unexpected. Not fear, not confusion, something quieter, something fragile. Hope. Because if she could survive her own death, maybe she could survive this too. What happens when hope collides with orders written in blood? The desert sun dipped lower, dragging long shadows across the runway. The rifles that had once pointed at Lena now hovered uncertainly, caught between command and conscience. And she, still trembling, still fractured, felt the faintest whisper of control stirring inside her. Hayes' voice cut through the heat like steel. Enough hesitation. She comes with me. Secure the pilot. The operators shifted, uneasy. Boots scraped. Metal clicked. But none of them moved forward. Not yet. Their eyes flicked to the ghost of a woman they weren't sure how to classify. Stepped forward, his frame blocking their line of sight. His voice thundered, unwavering. Stand down. Nobody touches her. For the first time, Hayes' calm cracked openly. His jaw set, his voice edged with command authority that brooked no defiance. Colonel, this isn't your call. She belongs to the directorate. She belongs to no one, snapped. Not anymore. Lena's heart pounded. The word echoed inside her, belongs. She had belonged to her squadron, to her call sign, to the uniform. She had belonged to the program without ever knowing it. She had belonged to the coffin they buried in her name. And now she belonged to nothing. To no one. The silence pressed down until his voice slipped into it, quiet but shaking. Sir, if you order us to fire on her, I won't. The admission cut the tension like a blade. One operator coughed softly, another shifted his stance. Not rebellion, not yet, but cracks, small fractures. Hayes' eyes burned. Do you understand what she is? What she carries in her head? She's not just a pilot, she's data. She's classified systems burned into human tissue. If she goes rogue, the cost won't just be her life. It'll be ours, theirs, thousands more. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his words press against her chest. He wasn't wrong. She could feel it in the fragments that tore at her mind: coordinates, tactics, frequencies, kill zones. Not just memories, but information. Some of it didn't even feel like hers. It was like her blood itself carried classified code. She whispered almost to herself, "So I'm not just haunted, I'm dangerous." His head turned sharply. "No, you're not dangerous, you're human. What they put in you, what they pulled out of you, that doesn't erase who you are." Hayes stepped closer, cold, deliberate. "Lieutenant, hear me clearly. You are unstable, and instability kills. It kills squadrons, it kills missions, it kills nations. You think you're choosing freedom, but what you're choosing is collapse. And when you collapse, others will burn with you." Her breath shook. The scar on her hand throbbed again, a reminder of fire, of wreckage. She thought of her mother, who had already buried an empty coffin. Would she have to bury her daughter again? Her throat ached. She forced her voice steady. "So what are you saying? That my choices are to die here or to disappear back into your cages?" Hayes' eyes narrowed. "Those are your only options." "No," said flatly. "There's always another way." The standoff was unbearable now. Every second stretched thin, the weight of rifles, of silence, of decisions no one wanted to make. And then, like a crack of lightning, the memories surged again. Not fragmented this time, whole, sharp, terrifyingly clear. She was in Syria. Low altitude, engines screaming, warning tones filling her headset. She saw the convoy breaking for cover. She saw the missiles arcing toward her. She felt the stick slam against her palm, burning skin to the bone. Her voice calm, unwavering, whispering into the radio, "Package delivered. Good hunting." And then fire. A wall of fire swallowing her. Pain, silence, nothing. Her body shuddered. She gasped, staggered back against the Warthog, clutching her chest as though the fire was still there, eating her alive. The operators tensed, reached for her. Hayes' eyes sharpened, seizing on her collapse like a vulture. "You see," Hayes hissed, "she's breaking. She won't last another day out here. Every second she stays free, she risks everyone around her. If you care about her, if you care about anyone, you'll let me take her." Lena forced her eyes open, tears blurring the world. She stared at Hayes through the haze of pain, and for the first time she understood what he was really saying. This wasn't about saving her. This was about control. About owning the ghost they thought they had buried. She straightened slowly, her body trembling but her voice clear. "You don't want to save me. You want to use me, again." Hayes didn't deny it. He simply watched her, cold, calculating, as if daring her to reject him. The choice pressed against her chest like a blade. If she went with him, maybe she lived a little longer, but at what cost? More experiments, more silence, more funerals with her name on the stone. If she resisted, maybe she died here. Maybe she tore apart in the desert heat, but at least it would be hers. Her eyes drifted to the operators caught between orders and conscience. They were waiting on her, waiting to see what the ghost would do. Her voice was quiet, steady. "I won't be your experiment anymore." The silence snapped. Hayes' face hardened. He raised a hand, signaling the operators. "Secure her now." Rifles came up, hesitation gone under direct command. Boots pounded against the tarmac. The circle tightened. Lena's breath caught, her pulse roaring in her ears. Her body tensed, not out of fear but out of resolve. She had chosen. Barked, his voice like thunder. "Stand down, that's an order." The operators faltered, caught in the clash of authority. Rifles wavered, boots slowed. Hayes snarled, "She is not yours to protect." And Lena felt something rise in her chest. Not fear, not despair, something fiercer. A fire she hadn't felt since the day they said she died. She straightened, shoulders back, chin lifted, the sun blazing off her visorless helmet. She looked every one of them in the eye, soldiers, pilots, commanders. And in a voice steady as steel, she whispered, "If you want me, you'll have to bury me again." The words hung in the air, heavy, electric. No one moved, no one breathed. Because sometimes, defiance doesn't need a weapon. Sometimes, it only needs a ghost who refuses to die twice. How long can rifles stay frozen before someone pulls the trigger? The desert air quivered with heat, but it wasn't the sun that made sweat run down the operator's temples. It was the silence, stretched thin, unbearable, a silence measured in heartbeats and in the weight of choice. Lena stood at its center, unarmed, her flight suit dusty, her hands trembling but lifted slightly, not in surrender, not in fear, but in warning. She had spoken her truth. If you want me, you'll have to bury me again. The rifles wavered, boots scraped, fingers hovered near triggers. His chest rose like a wall in front of her, his voice thunderous as he barked again, "Stand down." Hayes' jaw clenched, his hand raised high in command. His voice lashed like a whip. "Secure her, that is an order." The operators hesitated, trapped between two chains of command. Some shifted their aim, uncertain. Others looked too, who stood rigid, his rifle lowered, his face pale but resolute. Finally, one soldier broke the silence, voice low but sharp. "Sir, with respect, she saved my brother outside Aleppo. I'm not raising a gun on her." The words struck like a spark in dry brush. Another operator muttered agreement. Then another. The rifles sagged, uncertain, trembling in the space between obedience and conscience. Hayes' face darkened. His calm was gone now, stripped away. "This is insubordination, treason. You're letting emotion cloud judgment. She is unstable. She is dangerous." "Dangerous?" snapped, his glare like fire. "She's the only reason half of you are standing here breathing. If danger means survival, then I'll take her danger over your orders any day." The desert wind howled softly, carrying sand across boots and tires. Lena's heart hammered in her chest. She wanted to believe these men would choose her humanity over Hayes' orders. But deep inside, the echo still tore at her, the knowledge that Hayes wasn't wrong. She was dangerous. Because she could feel it now, clearer than ever. Her mind flickered, jumping between lives. Arizona, Syria, alive, dead. Each second the tether thinned, the split inside her widening. It wouldn't hold forever. Her voice broke the silence, softer than gunfire, sharper than knives. "Stop, all of you." The rifles froze, the argument halted, every eye turned to her. She stepped forward, slipping past shoulder, standing alone in the circle of guns and shadows. Her hand trembled, but her gaze was steady. "I am dangerous, not because of what I want, because of what they put in me." The words hit hard, spoken with no fear, no denial. Hayes' eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction, as if her admission proved him right. But then she continued. "And that means this ends with me, not with you, not with them." His voice cracked. "Lena, don't." She shook her head, cutting him off, her voice sharp. "All my life I followed orders, flew the missions they gave me, stayed silent when silence killed me inside. And what did it make me? A ghost, buried in Arlington, forgotten in Arizona, neither alive nor dead." Her throat tightened, but she pressed on. "I won't live like that anymore. I won't let them write my ending for me." The silence was suffocating now. Hayes' jaw tightened, sensing control slipping through his grasp. Fists clenched, his eyes burning with a plea she couldn't answer. And then the choice presented itself, sharp and brutal. Behind her, the Warthog waited, its engines dormant, its fuselage but sturdy. It was her home, her anchor, her partner in every flight. Ahead of her, rifles still lingered, operators torn between orders and conscience. And at the edge of the tarmac, Hayes stood like a shadow, demanding control with every breath. Her scar burned again, her vision swam with flashes of fire, and she knew she couldn't hold both lives forever. One would have to end. Her voice lowered, soft, almost a whisper meant only for the desert. A ghost doesn't belong in cages. A ghost doesn't belong in coffins. A ghost belongs in the sky. Before anyone could react, she moved. Her boots pounded across the tarmac, sprinting for the ladder of her Warthog. Shouts erupted. Rifles snapped up. Operators cursed. Hayes roared, "Stop her!" But was already moving, his frame colliding with the nearest soldier, knocking his rifle aside. Shouted, raising his own weapon not at Lena but at anyone who dared fire on her. Chaos ignited like wildfire. Lena's hands gripped the ladder, her body pulling itself up with a strength born not of training but of desperation. She climbed, faster than she ever had, each rung a heartbeat, each heartbeat a choice. She dropped into the cockpit, her breath ragged, her hands flying over switches she had memorized long before she knew what she was. The engines coughed, then roared to life, their guttural thunder drowning out the chaos below. Operators scattered, some raising rifles, others backing away. His voice bellowed over the din, "Hold your fire, that's an order." Hayes screamed above the roar, his face contorted with fury. "Shoot her down." The words cut through the noise. Soldiers froze, caught in the impossible, obey Hayes and kill the ghost who had once saved them, or defy command and let her fly free. And Lena, her fingers clenched around the throttle, her eyes fixed on the runway stretching into the horizon. Her heartbeat steadied, her breathing slowed. For the first time since Aleppo, since Arizona, since the day they buried her, she felt whole. Not alive, not dead, just whole. Her whisper filled the cockpit, carried on the roar of engines. Package delivered, good hunting. The brakes released. The Warthog thundered forward, dust and fire trailing in her wake. No one fired. Not the operators who had once aimed rifles at her chest. Even the snipers on the rooftops hesitated, their scopes fixed but fingers frozen. Hayes screamed, his voice drowned by the engines. He had lost. The Warthog lifted, heavy but defiant, its silhouette rising into the burning sky. On the ground they watched in silence. His jaw set, eyes wet, the operators' rifles lowered one by one. And in the sky above, the ghost they had tried to bury soared again. Not for command, not for orders, not for war. For herself. What does a ghost do with her second death? The Warthog climbed heavy into the dusk, its engine's thunder rolling across the desert. Dust plumed below her as the tarmac fell away, shrinking into a patchwork of lights and shadows. Lena's hands gripped the stick, steady now, no longer trembling. For the first time since the scar burned, since the memories tore her apart, she felt her body and mind moving as one. Behind her, chaos still churned, radios screaming, Hayes shouting orders, his voice lost in the storm. But none of it touched her, not anymore. The cockpit hummed around her, familiar, grounding. Every switch, every dial, every vibration in the seat belonged to her. Not to Hayes, not to the directorate, not to a coffin in Arlington. To her. She tilted the nose east, the horizon glowing faintly with the last fire of the setting sun. Her visor reflected the fading light, a mirror to a sky she had once thought she'd never touch again. Her heart pounded, not with fear, not with confusion, but with clarity. She was a ghost, but not the kind they made her. Not a tool, not an experiment, not a shadow bound to files and secrets. She was the kind of ghost that lived in memory, in loyalty, in sacrifice. The kind of ghost that didn't fade when command tried to bury her. Her scar burned again, but this time she welcomed it. Pain was proof that she had lived both lives, proof that she had given everything twice. The radio crackled in her ear, his voice raw, breaking through static. "Lena, don't do this, come back, we'll find another way." She swallowed hard, her throat thick. She wanted to answer, to promise she'd return, but deep inside she knew the truth. Some ghosts weren't meant to come back. Her hand hovered over the comm switch. Finally, she pressed it, her voice low, steady, carrying across miles of static. "You don't understand, Colonel. I already came back once." Static hissed, swallowing his reply. Her eyes stung, tears blurring the horizon. She blinked them away, letting the world sharpen into focus. Below her stretched the desert, endless, barren, silent. But in her mind she saw Aleppo's flames, Arizona's training routes, the coffin draped in a flag. Both lives colliding, finally at peace. Hayes' voice broke through the calm, sharp, venomous. "Lieutenant, listen to me. This isn't yours to decide. You are government property. Do you hear me? You are." She cut the channel with a flick of her switch. Silence filled her ears, beautiful and absolute. For the first time in years, she heard only the sound of her own engines. The Warthog surged forward, its wings steady against the twilight. She skimmed low, the ground rushing past beneath her, the wind clawing at the fuselage. Every sense sharpened, every nerve alive. She was not unraveling now. She was whole. Her breath slowed. Her voice whispered into the cockpit, soft, private, meant for no one but the sky. "Package delivered. Good hunting." This time the words weren't an order. They were a farewell. Her mind drifted to the crew she saved in Aleppo, to the colonel who defended her, to trembling loyalty, to the operators who lowered their rifles. She thought of her mother, who once stood at a grave that held nothing but air. She thought of the younger version of herself, eager, proud, unscarred. She smiled through tears. She was all of them, she was none of them, she was Ghost. The warning tones flickered on her HUD. Low fuel, system errors, a bird not meant to keep flying forever. She knew it, accepted it. Her hand steadied on the stick, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She could vanish tonight, into desert, into silence, into legend. Behind her on the ground, men would argue over what she was. A soldier, a myth, a mistake, a miracle. They'd write files, close programs, bury truths under ink and stone. But they would never forget the tail number that rose from the dust and refused to die. She breathed in, steady, final. "This time I write my own ending." The Warthog banked gently, wings catching the last glow of the sun. For a moment she wasn't in Arizona. She wasn't in Syria. She wasn't in any place that command could mark on a map. She was in between, alive and dead, flesh and memory, soldier and ghost. The desert swallowed her silhouette as the sun bled into the horizon, leaving only the roar of engines fatting into night. And in the silence that followed on the ground below, no one spoke. Not the operators who once aimed rifles at her chest. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes the bravest thing a ghost can do is choose where it finally rests.